What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Hero bans are dead. If you play ranked in a game that is below 3500 SR, all the heroes will be available to you. So with that being the case and a big change going live, we got one last tier list video until the next major patch change to discuss the power level of the heroes in the game with no bans in place. Let's kick it off with the tanks. All three main tanks are good. Talk a little bit more about CC and how that's changed things as we go through this, but because of that, Dive is a bit stronger than it otherwise would be, and as well, there's some serious power picks that's keeping Brawl in check. However, a lot of the time, Brawl is just going to be easier to play. Ryan Zarya getting in the mix. Consider Orisa on map-specific locations, especially like Anubis A defense or riding the payload in a long-range map where it will be too long for Reinhardt to get in close range. For example, Junkertown or Havana are great for Orisa. Just ride that payload out and get poke value where the close range tanks can't. There isn't really a tier 2, but a huge winner in the most recent patch to me has been Roadhog, who already was one of the stronger mid-fight characters, bringing a lot of damage and potentially straight-up pickoffs for his team. The big buff to Whole Hog should not be overlooked, because with it, I think he's low-key one of the best counters up against Echo, because he already was good against her in the mid-fight, being a threat to her, zoning her out, and putting more frontline pressure damage than she can. But when Whole Hog sends a target flying across the map immediately, it's one of the most reliable ways to disable that 15-second duplicate from getting much value. But not just that, up against all sorts of characters with really strong ultimate engages onto you. Primal Rage, Doomfist coming in with a Nano Blade, protecting the team when Mei uses Blizzard. It is a serious level of crowd control, making me way higher on Roadhog than I've been in the past. But otherwise, the rest of the tanks, Sigma and D.Va, you definitely want to think about using to swap out in the Zarya role on longer range maps. With an Orisa, Sigma makes sense there, but even sometimes up against double hit scan, you can continue to get Reinhardt Brawl comps to work because the two flexible shields can zone out range damage. Or if there's too much spam coming in too quickly and you can't survive as Zarya, but still want to brawl a bit, Sigma can do that by turning the enemy's damage into kinetic grasp health, making him potentially more tanky than her as well as providing more damage denial and almost as much damage as she can put out. And the last potential swap is D.Va, who can't really hold her ground on the front line, but really disables a lot of off-angle attacks that otherwise would beat you. It's going to depend on how much these things get picked in your games, but she's still going to be the best option up against Pharah. If you have to be the one to deal with a Tracer in your backline, D.Va's the best option to most flexibly change to deny damage angles that's beating you. I don't feel like she's as required with Winston unless there's a specific cooldown you want to eat on the dive, like going up against an Ana, for example. Masking the Ana so she can't nade herself is amazing value and will set up your Winston to get a free kill. But if you either can't execute that for one reason or another, letting Wrecking Ball lead the dive and have Winston follow him provides more damage on impact with the pile driver and leap combo coming through. The two of them can really play at a hectic pace. Moving on to the healers now, really important that you don't overlook how much higher Mercy is in the tier list and how this is all reconfigured. Reason being, between Echo coming in and Pharah getting buffed, either one of them can be paired with a Mercy to utterly dominate some of the otherwise really strong characters that are good at fighting in at close range. Now, of course, you're going to need a DPS player competent on those heroes in order to do so, but once you do, the game moves away from being about the tank battle and the aerial battle can dominate. There are some key picks that keep that in check in the DPS category. We'll get to those, but without hero pools limiting anything, it is going to come down to the players in your lobby on which one of these wins out. Brawl's really strong, but the overhead spam flying DPS can beat it pretty hard if aided by a Mercy. So that's how that interaction works out. Lucio finally goes up to the top of the entire tier list for me, because if you're trying to run Brawl, and if you don't have a Lucio and the enemy run any of those range damage characters, your team can get picked apart really easily. He's the most flexible, he has the most carry potential with the movement and dueling he can do. Doesn't provide a lot of healing for the team, but that kind of doesn't matter if the battle's going vertical anyway, for one reason or another. Now, I am putting Moira higher on the list list than the carry healer Ana, and the reason being is that we're not seeing as much diva because she's kind of kept in check by other things. So because of that, you're gonna get quite a bit of value out of Moira orbs, and the charge rate on Coalescence makes for free team fight wins. Hitting multiple enemies and teammates with it dominates brawls early in fights before any other ults can come up. So a lot of that range damage coming through can get turned into an advantage for you picking Moira, not to mention she also can escape and do everything else. Keep in mind that she isn't good at healing DPS except for the ones that stand right in front of her with the Rhine, so she doesn't enable them, and if the enemy's playing range damage up against you, it's your job to farm up Cole and then engage with that. Still in tier 1 are Ana and Brig. Their cooldown interactions can carry team fights outright, but both of them are a bit harder to stay alive than some of the other picks. The only supports I would say avoid is Baptiste Zen, except in cases where you're running double shield on some of its best maps. These heroes are best when played together, but it requires team fights to be happening in the best spots for lamps. And if you feel like the team fight ever spreads out and you gotta toss a lamp to save a teammate way off in no man's land, you're kind of letting your teammate throw away your best cooldown. So Bap Zen are really good when the entire team plays properly around it, but not very flexible in sort of the chaotic ranked team fights that tend to happen. So I would say avoid them except on the long range maps. Onto the DPS picks now. There's quite a healthy mix here between brawl and anti-brawl. A lot of the staples that we've been used to being really strong are still there despite nerfs to things like Mei's Blizzard, McCree's Stun in the most recent CC update. They're still really good, just with everything else they do. Mei still got multi-freeze. McCree using stun to interrupt things is more important than the duration of the stun itself, and his damage is just incredible when you're playing Rhine v Rhine, and he can punish dive unless he gets outplayed. They're on top for me. Torb is very stable, adds a ton of poke, but you'll notice that Echo and Pharah are up in their respective categories as well. I do think Echo is better, has a higher ceiling with Mercy, and Pharah is a bit more of an all-in counter to beat the likes of Reaper, Torb, Mei, Doomfist, which otherwise dominate the ground battle. Doom has enough counters for me to put him lower on the list, but when you look at it, there's a lot of picks that he can just go at and they can't really answer. So it will be map specific, similar to Widow, who's also lower down in tier 1. On their best maps, they dominate, but if you try to force them in spots that you shouldn't, you can send Genji after Widow. Either Reaper in close range against Doom or McCree stunning him out can beat him. So there's a lot of impactful plays to be had across the board here. I still think Tracer's top tier, but it does require more skill than many of the other options adjacent to her to get that value out. But if you are good, she can work. Talking about tier 2 now, Ashe, Hanzo, Soldier, I'm going to say are all positioning specific. If Soldier gets on top of Gibraltar second, way up top on the spaceship, he's great. But if you can't get high ground and have to shoot into a shield, it's kind of resident sleeper. He barely handles Echo as it is, and with Mercy available, she will just clown on him. So I'd avoid that. In fact, Sombra is going to be better up against Echo than Soldier is, but really you should be considering Widowmaker or McCree over a lot of these, because if it's a sniper map, Widow's going to be better than Ashe, and Hanzo can beat out Torb, but is harder to play reliably than some of these other picks. Despite the aerial spam characters being so good, I'm still keeping Symmetra in the map-specific tier 2 category, not on the avoid, because, well, the teleporter strats to get Rhine in position flat out wins maps like Lijiang Night Market or Hanamura A. I like her on Eichenwald myself, getting past that choke, or pressing up and getting ground. So Sim works to either punish double shield or be a brawl enabler to close the distance really fast, though she does get hard countered by Doomfist or any of the flying characters for sure. Characters on the avoid list, though, are Bastion and Junkrat. We keep saying how strong Echo and Pharah are after the buffs. These two will get utterly demolished by them, and based on their popularity, I'm going to say that you're going to come into contact with them often. Junk is pretty decent against Mei comps, pounding more damage into close range than they can, and Bastion is good against Doomfist, I guess, and can break shields, but everything can break shields, and when Bastion doesn't have protection around him, well, just every cooldown in the game can look towards him and disable him. So both of them at the bottom of the tier list, and with that being said, that's the entire cast of heroes, all available once again in ranked. If you're excited for that, let me know in the comment section down below. That's the end of the video, guys. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave it with a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe and hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Link in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news updates and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.